welcome to another edition of Read for Crit, our Roll for Crit book club. Today we are talking about two books that are very, very much board game related. They are Board Games That Tell Stories, number one, and number two. And they are both books written by Ignacy Trzewiczek of Portal Games, game designer behind games like Robinson Crusoe and 51st State and many others that I'm sure you're familiar with. These are actually collections of blog entries that he's posted online. Both of them were kickstarted and put into this format. You can also find them right now in places like Amazon. You can get them as Kindle editions as well, so you can go out there and check these out. They're not too expensive, but it's basically a bunch of little mini essays about game design, just stories about his experiences creating games, talking to other designers, and you know, there's not too much of a rigid structure to it. It's just kind of a collection of these little stories.
And in addition, I believe, I don't know if the regular ones you can find, but you kickstarted this.
Right.
In the back, they do have some extra stories from some other people, some other famous designers you may remember.
Yeah.
And from his wife as well.
That's right, yeah. Both of them end with an essay from his wife, Mary, which is nice. I assume the final ones also have those bonus Kickstarter content, but if not, I'm sorry we led you the wrong way. But those are pretty fun and interesting to read as well. So we're fans of these games.
We're obviously fans of him. We just interviewed him.
That's right. We have an interview with Ignacy not too long ago on our channel that you can also find. This was, I had read these books a while ago. I reread them for this, but this was your first time checking them out. What did you think of all these stories?
Well, I really liked it in the sense because one of the things when we first started Roll for Crit, we initially had a store. And for me, I really loved it because you learn a bit more. It's not simply just playing the game. You learn sort of behind the scenes, some of the annoyances of the distributors and what we all deal with. And that's what this book talks about from a designer. It's like how he's had to deal with some stuff. It also was really funny because these blog posts are much older than now. Like in this, he talks about being as in like, well, if your name's this or this, then yeah, you're definitely going to sell your game. But if your name's Ignacy Trzewiczek, no, it's not going to sell. Which now you know.
Right. He's graduated to being one of those names. Yeah, it is. You kind of get to go back into the past and see what was it like for, you know, he talks about their first time being at Essen and trying to sell these games, and the fact that, like today, we kind of take it for granted. We're Portal Games. They're one of the biggest publishers, really. But back then, as he says, you know, Poland didn't really have a reputation. People didn't know what to expect from these games.
Well, even now he points out, which I think still stands true, Essen, like, I think he said over like 200 games and probably more at this point now, only about 20 of them make Board Games' hot list, which is the items that people care about. So it's a very maybe not cutthroat, but hard.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of competition out there. It's hard to be the cream that rises to the top, especially right now. You know, we've seen with Kickstarter now, even we see so many games every single year.
I hope you're watching Kickstarters.
Yeah, you gotta be sure to check those out. So there's a lot going on in that sense. I found that it was interesting rereading them, and because I think the first time I read them, I knew a lot less about a lot of these things, and now going back and being like, oh, I recognize more of these names. And I do think that's one thing, is that knowing a little bit about board games, like as a baseline, I think is very helpful to enjoying these, especially like for the first one. I think that if you haven't played Robinson Crusoe, for instance, you're going to get a lot less out of it because a lot of the specific examples he gives are about the design of that game.
Well, in particular, I will say that if you decide to buy and read these, lock up your wallet, because you don't know how, but you will purchase his games if you don't already own them.
Yeah, no, the way that he talks about them and writes about them, first of all, if you've ever heard him speak at a convention or a presentation, you can't help but hear his voice reading these entries. And I really think the way that he writes, it's very conversational. A lot of times he'll give examples or quotes from people, but he won't say like, and then this person said in quotes. It'll be very rapid fire. It feels very
because
immediate.
I think these is taken from a blog instead of him writing like a biography. I think that's where it comes from, and that almost makes it a little bit more lighter and enjoyable.
Yeah, no, I like that. Like, I think that's a positive. I think it really makes you feel as if he's there talking to you. It really feels like you're listening to him give a little speech. It's really nice. And if you are like me, luckily I'm a huge fan of Robinson Crusoe, so reading those stories was really entertaining. And if you see a game that you're not familiar with, that, like you said, you really, really want to experience it to know what he's talking about. One of the other things I really love love is like he has stories about playtesting with Vlada Fatil, who I think is another like one of the most amazing game designers, and it feels like this amazing window into this world of these people who are just regular guys to most people, but in the board game world they're kind of these giants, and to just hear about their process behind the scenes is really, really funny and really entertaining. There's a lot of stuff to enjoy in here.
Yeah, and in particular, he'll hint at stuff that you probably don't think about when you're because at a convention, you're just there, I got to play all the board games. You're not thinking about how that guy's probably been telling the rules for that game 200 times in the last 2 hours.
Yeah, you really get that sense. Another thing I'll say is that they made me want to design board games. Like the way that he talks about the process of creating them is really, really alluring to me, and it made me. I think if you have any kind of a creative bent, you like board games, reading these, you're gonna wanna. It makes you want to go take out a piece of paper and start cutting up prototypes.
Interesting, but Jonathan, I would like to warn you at the back of this book that once the contract is signed, he owns your game. He will change it, and he will not negotiate.
Yeah,
he will destroy it.
That is one of his essays in this book. However, I will not take it to Portal Games. I'm gonna go to other distributors. And if you really do want to design a game, I think especially I found in the second book, he goes into specifics about how he works through with having playtesters and what types of playtesters are important. I think there is some just very valuable. It's not an instructional book, but you will gain a lot of insight into how to make a game.
No, and like for example, the playtesters. That's I think just the overall thing. Not even just board games, video games, and stuff. Like I know one of the examples I've heard with video games is they made a room and you're supposed to move forward and stuff. And then one guy walked backwards. They didn't think about that.
Right.
And that's the guy that he calls like the crazy tester, I believe.
Right. One person people are always going to try to do whatever it is that's going to end up breaking your game, and like how to prepare for that and test around that. Yeah, it's really fun. And those bonus essays, if your version comes with them, are also a lot of fun. They're not super long books. They're also blog entries that most of them, I believe, are still available online for free. So that is one thing to point out, but it is really nice to have them in this little presentation, and there's photos in there showing some of his prototypes, which is really cool to look at. Some of that one actually has some color photos.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was
in the middle, which are a lot of fun to look through. So yeah, if you're someone who is interested in game design personally, or you just find it interesting to read about, these are super light, they're easy to read. It's not like a textbook or anything like that. They're just fun stories, and you will probably learn some stuff.
It is a fun look behind the curtain, and I think in a very simple and very easy to digest way. As you said, not textbook. And of course, I think the added bonus, if you can find it from the other designers, because there's other very big name designers in the back and tell their own little fun stories, their experiences. Mm-hmm. It was a very enjoyable read.
Yeah, or even if you're just getting started in board games too, you can get kind of a little bit of a first step and see these names and be like, oh, I should try some of the games by these designers.
But maybe buy a Portal game first so you don't accidentally buy them all after you read the book.
I would generally suggest, first of all, I think you should play Robinson Crusoe if you haven't played it, but playing it before reading these, I think would make your experience a lot more satisfactory. So Board Games That Tell Stories, like I said, they're out there on Amazon. They were both Kickstarters. So you may not be able to find them, for instance, like in this hardcover format, but maybe in paperbacks or the Kindle edition, like I said, they're around. Definitely look for them. We recommend them heartily if you like board game books. Now, this is Read for Crit. This is a ongoing saga that we plan to continue reading more and more board game adjacent books.
Yeah, we try to do once of these a month. And we've decided to tackle a very big hurdle for next month.
That's right. We are going to have one of our next segments be on the first Song of Ice and Fire book, A Game of Thrones, as of course it is related to the Game of Thrones LCG and board game and other spin-offs in that world. So if you want to try to prepare along with us, probably many of you at home have already read that book, then you could read it and be part of the discussion for our next edition. So it'll be very exciting.
But until then, we'll turn the page, and I'm Will.
I'm Jonathan.
And this has been Read for Crit.
Don't forget to click that like button and, of course, subscribe for even more excellent videos.
I subscribed, and now I'm rich.